That's cinema, baby.
No, Mr. Wilson. I don't have to take that kind of talk from anyone.
That's right, you don't. How about going outside and trying to kick me around?
I'm not supposed to fight with the guests, Mr. Wilson.
I'm not a guest tonight, you yellow bastard. I happen to be an intruder.
Hello, and welcome to The Good, the Pod, and the Ugly, a film podcast where we pair movies to garner a better understanding of the filmographies of notable directors or actors, typically one artist/person/creator per season, often with guests. I'm your co-host, Ken Coral.
Yeah.
Can we just sample that and use it every time?
That's pretty good. I am your other co-host, Ken.
And I'm your other co-host, Ryan. And this is Jack. Say hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack. Don't say that in an airport.
Or an airplane,
Whoa.
even more so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or a helicopter. I don't want to be airist.
You ever see that, what?
I did end up getting my family's bag searched at Heathrow when I was 14 by saying in the line at security, they don't really think we got bombs in there, do we?
Oh my god.
So that didn't go well.
And you said you did that when you were 40?
14, but similar mindset for sure.
Great stuff.
So on this podcast, we do a deep dive on paired films and their backgrounds. We add our quote-unquote insights. This is part 2 of our first pairing that Jack chose. What are we talking about today, and what director are we talking about? Jack.
We are talking about Taiwanese filmmaker Tsai Miang-liang, and today we are covering his 1971 film Straw Dogs. Just kidding, we're covering his 1949 film Stray Dog. No, actually, we're covering his 2011 remake of Straw Dogs. Stray Dogs came out in 2013. That's the real one.
Up until renting it, I thought it was a remake of Straw Dogs.
No, you didn't.
I did. I misread the title in the text. Like I was just, and I thought Straw Dogs, huh? You know, weird, but okay.
So you thought this was like the Japanese Unforgiven episode, unreleased, by the way, lost episode.
Yeah. Yes, in part because Goodbye Dragon Inn, one of the titles we'll be watching later, I mixed up with a and the director. I mixed up with a Chinese national filmmaker who makes gangster, like hardcore gangster pictures. So I thought, it makes sense. He has a Straw Dogs movie. I thought Goodbye Dragon Inn was a different movie that I can tell you is called Black Coal, White Ice.
Oh yeah, I know the filmmaker you're referring to. Not personally. Ash is the purest white guy, right?
Yes, and I think he had a movie that came out in the same year as Goodbye Dragon Inn, so I conflated them in my mind.
So
Gotcha.
we talked about this last week, but Jack, if you could summarize again, because Tsai Miang-liang is not a household name in the States.
He is in this house.
He is in this house now. Tell us again, or in different words than last week, so people get a different flavor. Why? Why did you pick him? And why specifically this movie out of his pretty deep filmography?
You just spit in my face.
I'm sorry. I was trying not to laugh because I think we had the same thought at the same time. Well, technically you picked him, but
I did not.
You suggested. He is good. No, shut up. He's a really interesting filmmaker. I really like the Taiwanese New Wave movement. I'm a big Edward Yang head, and I think it's so much different than any other art, especially because on this podcast a lot we've been talking about directors who started making films in the 90s, Gen X directors. I think the Taiwanese New Wave movement is so much different from all of those movements that were happening in America and like France at the time, because a lot of it's because they were a recently collapsed dictatorship that was transitioning into a democracy. So there was a lot of subjects that they're able to cover. Tsai Miang-liang is also a big proponent of the slow cinema movement, and he takes a lot of inspiration from filmmakers like Belatar and Andrei Tarkovsky. And
there's a sandwich right there. Those two guys.
Yeah, slow sandwich. Yeah. And I picked Stray Dogs because he has only made 2 movies in the last like over a decade. And every one of his movies, I think he has 13 feature films and then plenty of short films. He's a working man. He's pretty much making a short film every year. Recently, he's been working on a series called Walker or Wanderer. It's a series of short films with Li Kangsheng, who is his muse, his artistic partner. He's been in every one of his movies. He said that he makes movies to study Li Kangsheng aging, to study him, his face, to study him as a body changing throughout the years, and he wouldn't make movies without him. He worked in television for a long time, but he said he would never have gotten into cinema without meeting him. They're not romantic partners, by the way. They live together. Tsai Miang-liang also, you might be surprised to know, in his spare time, he fixes up apartments and flips them on the outskirts of Taipei.
What?
And he lives in them. So he's moving from place to place, houses and apartment buildings on the outskirts of Taipei, abandoned ones. He'll fix them and live in them with Li Kangsheng. And so something about their artistic temperament together, where they're not partners, but they're not friends. There's something closer. They have some sort of bond that's outside anything that I've really seen in a filmmaker with a muse before. And I thought that picking for each pairing 2 movies that are 20 years apart would be really interesting, examining that.
And it took me a while to realize that he was the same actor in Stray Dogs, because I didn't know any of this until you just told me. I think you told me about him living with the actor, but they weren't a couple. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And that was one of the reasons where I said, why don't we do that Neon Gods guy?
Yeah.
Because it seemed like an interesting subject. And one of the reasons I didn't recognize him at first is because this movie takes so long to get to anything resembling a close-up, like 20, 25 minutes. So before we talk about the movie, though, if I was like a neckbeard and I was like, who's this Tsai Miang-liang guy? Is he going to do a Marvel? What kind of movies does he make?
Do a Marvel.
So what would you tell that person? Like, what kind of movies does he make? To the neophyte.
He makes slow, moody, dreary pieces that take place in Taipei that are oppressive and about modern life, and he's very interested in slowly getting you to a place where he can put in a short story. So I would say his films are long series of tableaus with little tiny short stories sprinkled in. And that's something we'll talk about when we get to Goodbye Dragon Inn, which is entirely a series of tableaus as a film. I think he's really interested in putting short stories into his films. Some of them which are only one shot, and some of which take up whole segments of his movies.
Have any of his movies, any of his shorts, ever grown into a feature? Is like I'm thinking about this movie and some of the stuff in the opening. Does any of that? Because you could almost see the opening shot is a 5-minute shot of a woman brushing her hair and 2 kids sleeping in a bed. And I don't think it's the same woman later in the movie, is it?
No.
And she never comes back. Not really explained. It's in the same house that they're in at the end. And it almost feels disconnected in a lot of ways from the rest of the movie, which feels disconnected from a lot of things.
Yeah.
How would you describe this movie? That same neckbeard. Like, oh, he's not making a Marvel. Okay. DC? And if you said no, not a DC, and no, not a Star Wars.
I really want to see Tsai Miang-liang's Batman or something.
It's just Bruce Wayne sitting at his chair in the Batcave with his mask off,
Listen,
smoking a cigarette.
I would eat that shit up.
Yeah, me too.
But what is this movie like? How would you describe this movie to someone? You want to take a stab at it, Jack? Right? Do you want to take a stab? Like plot wise.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the summary on Letterboxd was accurate, if it wholly incomplete at describing the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a lonely retail worker and a homeless man with two children find each other and take like the and it had an optimistic reading of the ending, which I don't know that it's not optimistic, but I don't think it was as overt. But it was something like they find hope for the future together.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was not my reading of
No.
it.
So the most important question, is this the first time for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Second most important question. Does this movie come off as pro-cabbage or anti-cabbage?
Miss Big Boobs, the cabbage. Pro cabbage, anti abusive father.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering what the cabbage means, the little girl who is the daughter of the homeless guy who spends his days holding a sign for apartments, ironically, and is homeless. And we first meet him actually at a very long shot. You don't even know if he's the main character or not. It's just him at an intersection of a very busy intersection with the rain and the wind lashing at his little see-through raincoat that everybody seems to have. And rain is a big feature in this movie. It's pretty much raining the entire time.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That one day her daughter brings home a cabbage and is going to keep it as like a friend.
Yeah.
It's like Baldric and his...
Turnip?
Turnip.
Yeah.
A great big turnip like my own.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, there's...
It's the only laughs in the movie is the little girl in her cabbage. It's funny.
I just feel like there is so much to say. I have so much to say about this movie. I don't even know where to start, but yeah, I didn't know if that was Li Kangsheng, even when they did close-ups of him later in the movie. It took me until almost the end to be like, oh, yeah, that is definitely him, because his face is so, for the first, and this is definitely a separation where there's the first part of this movie, which is an hour and 45 minutes, and then whereabouts, and then there's the last half hour-ish. Yeah. And the first part of the movie, he's gained a lot of weight and his face is like bright red and bloated. Mm-hmm. And having seen just some of the other stuff that they've been doing around the same time, he hasn't just gained a lot of weight naturally over time. That was something that he definitely did for the movie, and there is a purpose to it, which you don't even really understand. The way this movie is told with those little tableaus early on, I think there's 2 or 3 separate, like 2 to 5 minute shots of him in the distance, and the camera gets a little closer each time. But yeah, you're not sure if that's him, if that's the main character, if that's just a tableau that he's putting in as a little short story to show life in the city or not. It takes so long for me, at least me personally, to understand not just the pacing, but what he's even trying to get at in this movie. But once he does, it hits you like a truck, I think.
Yeah, totally.
I did recognize him when he was eating his long meal, when he's having his lunch. I was like, oh, that's that guy.
Yeah.
I think one of the great things he does in that opening shot I talked about, where it's just a lady brushing her hair and then staring off, and little kids in the background sleeping in this weird, almost nightmarish room where it's all just black and white, but it's all like
I fucking love that room.
Charred black and white. and it lasts so long, and I really feel it's such a great way to open the movie, because if you're in, you're in. If the movie's not going to work for you, it's not, that scene is going to tell you it's not going to work for you. And if you got up and left, you'd probably be right.
Yeah.
Because nothing about the rest of the movie counters that. If anything, it expands upon it. And there are some scenes, like the first scene of the guy holding the sign. I mean, I was saying, like, man, I kind of want to time how long these lights last in Taipei, because they're a long time, and it's a very busy intersection, and it seems miserable. And I started to feel cold and wet just watching it. But it lulls you into a sense of the film's rhythms.
Yes.
Whether, like I said, you're either with it or you're not.
I read a letterboxed review after we finished the movie that I want to bring up from J.A. Schrecker, who gave it 4 stars out of 5. And they said, this like made me, I think, really understand the movie in a different context. If you think watching a homeless man advertise for luxury apartments in an unbroken long take is unbearable, imagine how time moves for him.
Yeah.
And that just made me go like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's something I hadn't even considered.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was very much, as soon as it cut to that, I was like, and then it went on, I was like, oh my God, that's upsetting. I don't want to. In fact, I was talking to Jenny.
Wet socks.
Yeah. I was talking to Jenny about how I think about the sign twirlers every time I see one, and how that's just maybe one of the top 5 at least seen worst late capitalism jobs. Like, I'm sure there are people who have jobs that we never see that are worse, but of the ones that you see, it's like, oh, that is the end of everything right there. That's I had mixed feelings about some of this film, but the anything in that building and anything in the wilderness was like, 12 out of 10. That first shot in particular is like worth the price of it. I could just watch that all forever, just beautiful. And really, I see a lot of old movies and think like, oh yeah, David Lynch has obviously seen that, and he uses this like 6 times throughout his career, whatnot. But some of the images in Stray Dogs felt like he's seen them before he made the return. Just the haunting nature and the use of slow cinema to talk about this darkness living right beside this totally mundane world. It just felt very much. And the rare thing to see that's like, I think this inspired David Lynch of contemporary stuff. It's easy to see the people who pay homage to him everywhere, but to see someone who's influencing him is different.
Yeah, I think Stalker was probably my touchstone for this movie. It felt like the entire movie took place in a more urban version of the zone that they go in. It was like a mixture of the city outside the zone and the zone, but there was no changing of it with film types.
Yeah. That's interesting that you're talking about the opening shot so much, you two, because that is something I wanted to touch on. That's straight from Tarkovsky. I think every one of his movies, he opens with a 5-minute medium wide unbroken take like that. Especially Stalker has like pretty much the same opening shot.
Yeah.
Wow. I've only seen 2 of his, and I just think it was the wrong 2 to see as a beginner. I was watching with people who had seen many of his films. And it was like it was not the big ones, but I've never gone back to him, but I think I should.
Watch the 2002 animated Clone Wars. Oh wait, that's Tartakovsky. Excuse me.
That is a good one.
It is pretty good.
It is pretty good.
Primal too.
Yeah.
Primal and Stalker are like set in the same sort of.
Yep. Sure.
Primal. Speaking of shit that the internet swallowed, Primal, which will never be available again ever anywhere.
Oh my God! Really?
Bob's is in charge of Warner Brothers.
That guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that guy
fucking
sucks.
piece of shit.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, ruined House of the Dragon.
The first thing he's taken that was like that touched me personally was like, I fucking love that shit. Come on.
Yeah, he is the worst. We talked a lot about that stuff disappearing off streaming services last week. Go
Yes.
back to that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something. Oh yeah, Ryan, you were talking about the letterbox description. I read the letterbox description before I watched this movie, and an hour and 45 minutes into this movie, I was like, what are they talking about? Like, that's not what the movie has been about so far, about an alcoholic father. I was like, he's not an alcoholic, is he? I didn't get any of that. But then once the thing happens, which is very late into this movie, maybe an hour and a half or so, you realize you can go back and think to everything that has happened so far, and it gives it a completely different context, because you realize, oh, that's why he gives all of his money to the son, so that he doesn't drink, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably why they're living on the street in the first place. And once he takes that first drink, there's a pretty horrifying shot from very far away where he's sort of chasing the son down and demanding the money.
Yes.
You don't really know what's going on at first. And then when he takes that first drink, it flips genre and becomes a horror movie. And it was just such an unbelievable left turn that I was never expecting. And I've heard a lot about online the infamous unbroken take where someone eats a cabbage in a Tsai Miang movie. So I knew that someone would eat the cabbage once it showed up. I was like, oh, this is probably the movie that everyone talks about. So I was expecting like maybe a funny scene or something.
No.
When he eats the cabbage, it's like the bike being destroyed in Rebels of the Neon God. It's just someone fucking up a bike. It shouldn't be as gross and violent as it is. But that cabbage, it's like
Chekhov's cabbage.
Chekhov's cabbage. Yeah, you said that when we watched it. You were like, if a cabbage is introduced in a movie, someone's going to eat it.
Gonna eat it.
Yeah,
especially if the children make a mannequin out of it.
Yeah,
they call Miss Big Boobs, and they draw 2 eyes and red lips on it. And then he snuggles with it, and then gets angry at it. And when he puts his 2 fingers where the eyes are, it's such a weirdly violent act. It feels so violating to the kids and their kind of innocent, giggly little kid stuff. That it's more violent than if you had a scene of him slapping him around or something, you know?
Yeah.
And it just feels like it's so cruel what he does to that cabbage. And then it's an unbroken take for like 10 minutes of the actor eating cabbage
and crying.
Oh boy. And it doesn't stop. You keep thinking, oh, they're going to cut, right? How much is he going to eat? He almost eats the whole thing. This is a cabbage the size of a human head.
Yeah. What did you say about that?
I think it's bigger than many heads. Even.
I said I bet what's the actor's name?
Li Kang-sheng.
I bet afterwards like after they did that shot, he probably had to go to like some fancy dinner afterwards, but like couldn't eat anything because he was like so like full of cabbage.
Yeah.
That's my
It reminded me in a very, obviously it's a very different scene in so many ways, but it reminded me of Oh Dai-Su walking into the sushi bar and demanding to eat something that's alive, and then you watch him eat the
octopus.
Squid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what was the other one that we had?
Yeah, so we were thinking about, Ryan, you've seen Long Day's Journey into Night, right?
Yeah. I thought about that a lot during this movie.
Okay.
Yeah,
Me too.
They're incredibly similar movies. Let's not, because there's the big thing that happens in that movie. Let's not spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen it.
Okay.
Annabel specifically. But there is an unbroken shot of someone eating an entire apple, which is pretty amazing. And crying the whole time.
Core and all. Every single bit.
Yes.
And it is extremely deserved. My thought was, when I was watching it, was, I wonder, after he finished, if Tsai Miang-liang said, okay, this time we'll put film in the camera. one more time. One more shot.
Well, actually, that leads me to a very interesting point, which is this was, I think, his first feature that he shot on digital, not on film. And you can tell early on, maybe Ryan, you'll have something to say about this, about trying to capture real life successfully or unsuccessfully. There were a few shots early in this movie that were just so well composed, but just so mundane that I was like, there's an early one where the kids are in the park, which may or may not be a wilderness that may or may not actually exist. I don't know. I couldn't tell because it's a park in the middle of the city, but then later it's like a whole forest and it's flooding. Very dreamlike. But there's a shot early on where they're exploring a tunnel, and I was like, this looks like something I could have shot on my phone down at like Burnt Bridge Creek. Like, it just felt so real. And a lot of the early parts of this movie I felt captured real life, quote unquote, sorry Ryan, so well that when it takes this left turn in the last half hour and becomes a ghost story, I was hit so hard by it. It came out of nowhere. I was just not expecting it at all.
I guess I didn't feel other than the cars and the scooters driving by when he's holding the sign. It's like almost every other scene is like the supermarket lady. She's introduced in a fairly naturalistic way. She's like, her job. She's like smells the cases. But she goes to this completely abandoned building, and it's like a government building, and she stares at this mural of the forest. I don't know metaphorically what that is, if she's in a crumpling, depopulated administrative building looking at a mural of what's lost. And then she like pops a squat.
Peas.
Slay.
And then when the kids and the dad are wandering around, it's like nobody else is around. It's like the scenes when he's holding the sign, it's like a big, vibrant city. But most of the other scenes, it just feels so empty. There are no other homeless people. I don't know if that's a virtue of Tai Pei. I don't know what their situation is. But it really feels like they're almost, I won't say on another planet. But it almost, like I said, it feels very apocalyptic. And then when he goes to that really nice abandoned condo or whatever it is, penthouse. Again, what is that? It's something that was built and nobody lives there. Why does nobody live there? I mean, you get a real sense of things having fallen apart before the story starts.
Wow.
And then when it takes the left turn in the last act, I was not expecting it because it's a slow movie that pulls you into it's one of those sink-in movies. And then when it happens, you're like, yeah, it's one of the best slaps in the face moments of a movie, probably since the
Long Day's Journey
at Night, and that last hour. Where it's just like, what have I been watching, and now what am I watching?
Yeah.
I could not figure out the visuals of the world that they live in at the end of this movie, because there are scenes that literally make no sense architecturally wise.
Yeah.
And
geographically.
Does anybody want to take a shot at describing what the walls and the house looks like when they all they all end up with the supermarket lady who finds them through the girl who is kind of stinky. She can't find the smell until she realizes the little girl, and then watches her in the bathroom. And then when the dad's trying to go out into the water with the kids, they run to her. And then after that,
it's a cut to black, and then it fades into the dad standing there with his head hung like a ghost. He's in shadow, and they're lighting the candles for a birthday cake for him. And that was the point where I was like, he looks like a ghost. He looks like this inky blot of darkness. It looks like he's dead. And I was like, that's not the direction this movie's going, is it? And then after that shot, you're all of a sudden in this world where it's like, did they all drown? Are they all dead? Is he dead? Is this a memory that is corrupted and his brain is slowly corroded and he is dying, and this is some corrupt memory of what his life was like before?
Whoa, yeah.
Something like that. And yeah, the house there's no windows. The rooms don't really make any sense where they lead, and the walls are all painted to look like mold, but everything in the house is painted the same so that you can't tell where the counters start and where the walls end and where the ceiling begins.
Yeah, it's like Escher, if he instead of looking for clean geometric lines, he went for almost like a charred look of like a charred tree or a charred plank of wood.
Yeah.
And the entire house is painted, even the curtains and the sheets and everything.
Jenny and I were debating about whether they used drip paint and then flipped everything upside down, or whether they painted with sticks.
Ooh.
I thought painted with sticks. Jenny's pretty committed to drip paint and then flip approach.
There is one particular shot which all these shots are very long, so you get a lot of time to kind of notice the details. I could not figure it out. It's when he is standing almost like in a walkway maybe above something, and he's drinking. He's taking the drinks from a cabinet, and there's like a walkway beneath him, but then she's also beside him. It looked like bad perspective from somebody who's never drawn perspective, but kind of tried to figure something out. Like when I was trying to draw comic books when I was 9.
Yeah.
And it really broke my brain a little bit. I could not figure out what it was I was seeing.
Yeah, I was tripping balls. That whole last section of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really scared me a lot. I guess that's all I have to say about it. It really felt like Annabelle and I went to the Mark Rothko exhibit.
Shout out
in Paris, and there's adjusting our monocles and ties and sipping tea.
I love Rothko.
Rothko's the best.
Yeah.
And there's points in that exhibit, the way it's laid out, where you'll look at all of his paintings and there'll be the descriptions on the walls in French, but also in English for the English speakers there. About like what he was going through at this period in his life and blah, blah, blah. And some of the paintings are happy. Some of them are kind of sad. And then you walk into this room where it's called like the Red Room or the Rage Room or something, where the walls are just filled with these huge paintings that are just violent and dark red and disturbing.
Wow.
And it was like, at this point in time, he's going through a divorce and he was suicidal and all this crazy stuff. And you can just feel it emanating from the walls in the room. And it's a really visceral experience. And that's kind of how I felt watching this last half hour, is it's not just the walls closing in, but it's everything. It seems just so desperately desolate and haunted, and it really feels like some sort of fragment of a memory of a dream that someone is having right before they die. And it just really, really disturbed me on a fundamental level.
I didn't catch. I was just kind of letting that part wash over me, and I didn't really catch any of that. But I'm excited to rewatch.
And then he asks. So the title, in case you're wondering, is because the woman who works for the supermarket goes the abandoned building at the first level. There are stray dogs.
Whoa.
And also the homeless dad and the 2 kids are in a sense metaphorically stray dogs as well. So
interesting.
I think she is as well.
They all are, but the remarkable thing is he asks if she needs help because she's going to feed them, and then they go back to that weird, almost governmental administration building that's just all rubble. But you could almost tell when she's walking around in these grand staircases that at one point it must have been a beautiful brand new building, right? This could have something to do with Taiwan's previous government that you're talking about, the dictatorship. And then they go to that same mural, and one of the most amazing scenes, probably the most amazing scene since the dude walks around the whale in Wreckmaster Harmonies, the Bela Tarr movie, where it's just on their faces for, God, fucking 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It goes on and on. But I was never bored or wanting it to end. The slight ticks in emotion in her face, and then him occasionally drinking.
Double fist in it.
So fucking mesmerizing.
Yeah.
I just felt like I was completely captured in the pacing and the vibe of this movie. That I it could have gone on for 20 minutes and I would have been okay with that shot.
Same. I almost didn't want it to end because it seemed it was 2 people coming to some sort of conclusion, some sort of different conclusion, maybe a quite depressing one, but it seemed like there was some sort of little semblance of hope there, whereas the rest of the movie had been so desolate and so hopeless.
Yeah. I feel foolish because I think that your guys' read on the movie and the ghost, the haunted quality at the end and the ghost thing seemed obvious as soon as you said it, Jack. But I thought of them as making a home together underground, like the stray dogs. All kind of have a pack, even though they are in a shitty circumstance and forgotten about by the humans who, raised them or trained them or whatever. And at the end, he is reluctant to participate in this family unit, but he finds a sort of peace being able to gaze at the painting with her.
I mean,
Not saying,
I think the mural has it to me anyway. It had a lot of meaning. I didn't know anything about Taiwanese government until Jackie talked about it last week and this week.
yeah,
But the painting, when I was watching it, was like, wow, that really feels like a promise unfulfilled by
Right.
society, and what is now lost and what they can never get back, because everything is so urbanized in this movie, and so so compact with buildings, and at least at his job, people, maybe at her job too, but on the outskirts of it, there's nobody, and it's a really sad, bleak landscape that the promise of a Taiwan with the mountains and the streams was really haunting and sad to me, and that maybe the ghost story was about that country that's no longer there.
Oh, wow.
yeah, that is
Yeah.
a common subject, not necessarily in Asian cinema, but I've seen it a lot in Latin American cinema. Is the that capitalism has become like was a new kind of colonialism that was asserted on all the post-colonial countries, and that what was stolen was a sense of attachment to the land, and what it was replaced was this generic Burger King and stuff. And when I saw him as the sign holder, how I felt about I love the grocery store stuff, but how I felt about a lot of the other stuff was it's the flattening of everything and everywhere, was like what I saw as like the sign holders are the same thing. And this is kind of what I felt a little bit about Rebels of the Neon God, is like the arcades and stuff, that like those are lifestyles that are familiar to anyone who lives in a Western, capitalist country. Whereas the natural stuff and the spiritual stuff, those are uniquely local elements, and those are the only things that, and that is in part what they're mourning with the mural, is the loss of like the natural world's relationship to the surroundings around you that makes any kind of sense with being a person. Stuff like that. But at the same time, I felt like, again, that together they achieve a sort of bizarre harmony in this weird like bomb shelter life that they develop. And it's like a bomb shelter. It's like depressing, but it is something. Also, this is where the poverty porn, which is not a term that I necessarily like using with this artist, but I think very much might be a mindset thing that the viewer brings to it. Like, I just have this place where they end up is so beautiful to me that I don't feel my aesthetic reaction to the place is so at odds with what it would be like to exist in this place, that it's really hard for it to provoke a really deep emotion. That might be a personal thing, because I really love post-industrial. Before they built the Pearl District, they just leveled the warehouse district, and that was I lived down there, and that was my favorite time to just walk around, because it was so beautiful to me. But it is something that somebody, my parents would look at and think like, God, this is the most miserable thing I can imagine. This black on the walls, like my mom would vomit, if she had to watch this movie. So it's weird, man. That's all.
Wow.
Ooh, wow. Some deep thoughts on this movie, y'all.
Yeah,
Sorry about that. No, I hadn't thought about either of those takes.
Yeah, it definitely inspired a lot deep thoughts. I thought about it. I'm kind of glad that Ryan, you weren't able to do this the other day because it gave me a few more days to try and load my review onto Letterboxd, which won't allow me to. I
Weird.
pretty much talked about my review last week with Rebels of the Neon God, where it felt like the edifying feeling that people must feel after they go to church, like religious people.
Yeah.
Because I'm not one of those people, but because I am so, as a film goer, my favorite movies, and as a writer, I'm like narrative based, like the plot mechanics and whatnot. I love character and whatnot. So when something just comes purely from a cinematic point of view and uses all those elements, but doesn't necessarily care about the plot mechanics, like, Mrs. Higginbottom's jewels got stolen and you have to figure out who does it by the third act. That it really rewired my brain as I watched it. And then when it was over, I looked over, Annabel was here watching it, and I felt like I was still in the movie, even after we turned it off. And it lasted for like 10 or 15 minutes. It was like, you see the world in a different way. And I think that's the power of great cinema. That's why we keep watching movies, is that we want an experience that is so unique and comes from such a singular point of view that for just a little while, it kind of changes the way we see the world. And that was really the magic of this movie for me, anyway. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I was legitimately transported to a different way of looking at the world for a bit, and complete 100% masterpiece that I'm looking forward to seeing again someday.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think the first 20 minutes or a half hour is enjoyable in an amusing way, that until I really got into the rhythm of it, but if I rewatched it, I would probably be a little more horrified, because having seen Goodbye Dragon Inn, which is it's not a comedy, it's not a happy movie, but it's a lot lighter. It's got a lot of fun stuff going for it. I didn't know if Stray Dogs was going to go that route. So when he was holding the sign, when it cut back to him holding the sign for the second time, I actually laughed, because I didn't know if it was going to turn into like a funny comedic bit with the guy next to him or something. And I think rewatching this movie, I would be more horrified at how long that stuff goes on.
Yeah.
The corner of your sign's in front of my sign.
One thing you said, and I think about this a ton, is but one thing you said, Ken, reminded me of Ebert's essay where he talks about how movies are an empathy machine, and like you turn it on and you sit down and you get to feel the world through someone else's brain for a couple hours, and that which leads to, I love his idea about what film criticism is, which is that he doesn't evaluate a movie on what it's about, but how it tells the story, how it's about it is how he says it. And in that way, like, you can see something that you don't like and also say like, well, this is obviously a masterpiece, or that John Carpenter can make something just as meaningful as Lawrence of Arabia or whatever. And then the feeling you had that a couple of movies like Nowhere, when I saw that in the 90s, the Greg Araki movie, which is hitting Criterion next week and is a fucking amazing movie and everybody should go see it. I felt really like that was the first movie I was like maybe 19 when I saw that, 18. But that was the first movie that I connected with as an adult in this spiritual way that you're kind of talking about, Ken. And then besides the end of this movie, I don't connect with this gentleman's film so far in that way, but that's what I love about Twin Peaks: The Return and what is the NWR one? Only the Dead Die Young or whatever. Oh, I love that one. But yes, it is it's the slow cinema and the transportive nature. With him, it was actually the Copenhagen Cowboy. That was the one where it was like, oh my God, this is like whole nother universe.
I do kind of want to give that one a shot.
Yeah.
Just for you, Ryan.
Yeah. Watching, you will know, after the first episode if it's for you or not. It's very
Okay.
much the vibe hits hard and is immediate. But yeah, that's what those things got me really into slow cinema for the first time. And Jack, I don't think I had seen the NWR one when we saw Memoria together, which I hated with a
Ooh.
fiery passion.
Yes, and I liked until the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. The one I was like, oh yeah, this is a movie. I see what's happening now. We got a movie going, and then it ended. It's like, what the fuck? Anyway, yeah, so parts of this, I will see this movie many times trying to figure out if I like it or not, and then just
Yeah.
in all of the Black House stuff is just, for whatever reason, it makes my goth boy heart so happy.
Yeah.
I could just watch it forever.
I think it's the same. I mean, not to bring up another movie again, but A Long Day's Journey into Night. If that movie was just the first hour and a half, I think the first hour and a half is great in the context of the rest of the movie, but I don't think I would like it very much.
Yeah, agreed.
If Stray Dogs was the first hour and a half, I think I told Annabel afterwards, without all the haunted house shit at the end, before he takes the first drink, this could almost be a happy little slice of life. This kind of sucks, but he's doing what he can for his kids. It could almost be like a little...
I just want to see my kids.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I could watch the last hour of Long Day's Journey into Night every day and never get sick of it.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a whole 2.5 hour experience it's a tougher sell. Just like I think a lot of Tsai Miang-liang's movies are kind of a tough sell, and you're either with it or you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Annabelle, did you like it?
I did, yes. You know, I just keep thinking about the scene where they're like in the walk-in in the grocery store and they're just standing there shivering. That's my favorite part of that movie.
And then the lady kind of bumps into her a little bit.
Yeah.
I forgot.
So weird.
I forgot to mention in both of these movies, people start shaking randomly.
Yeah.
Rebels of the Neon God has the scene where he's shaking as he overhears them talking about how he's a reincarnation or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so unnatural. They're not shivering like they're cold. They're shivering like they're about to...
No, it's very contemporary dance, the way they're shivering.
Yeah.
I was like, get into it.
They almost seem a little bit excited, and whether intentional or not, it actually reminded me of The Shining and how they connect with the cook in the walk-in freezer, and they're in this really cold place, but he's like warming up to Danny and talking to Shelly, and it's like a moment of bonding in this really weird, isolated place and situation.
Totally.
My job has a giant walk-in freezer, and I've never bonded with anybody in the walk-in freezer. So
how?
It's a complete fiction that it ever happens.
That is a you experience only.
Yeah,
the walk-in is where that's where the shit goes down.
Yeah,
it's true.
There is a city guy who came in to work on the freezer once. The freezer was working, but they were like chopping away the ice, and he was a big dude. Didn't have any gloves. Didn't have any headgear on to cover his ears. I swear to God, he was in there for like an hour and a half working, and his partner had to keep coming out going like, I don't know how the fuck he does it.
Yeah.
And the dude came out when he was done fixing it, and he wasn't like, oh, it's cold in there like I do when I spend 30 seconds in there. It's like, it's almost freezing in there. But he was like completely normal. And it still weirds me out.
He does cold plunges.
What?
He does cold plunges.
He probably does cold plunges.
That guy wasn't human.
Yeah, he may have been a demon of some kind.
The first of many things that happened in the walk-in in a place of work that I was at, Ken, was I was working at a Chevron right after moving up here. I was on the graveyard shift.
Whoa.
And two of the guys who had the swing shift were like really small-time drug dealers who thought they were a big deal because they dealt drugs out of the Chevron. But they, for some reason, had decided to drop ecstasy at work. And then the manager came in
oh my God.
for the shift transition. And so they just hung out in the freezer
Oh.
for like an hour, but then the manager left after they'd been in there an hour because they were on drugs. They spent the next hour and a half in there for no reason because they refused to come out and check to see. They didn't believe that he was gone. They wouldn't believe me, and they refused to come out to look for themselves. So they just flipped in
Wow.
rolled in the walk-in, rolling
So
in
you're
the
saying
walk-in.
that city worker I was talking about, you're saying he was on ecstasy.
He might have been the same fucking guy, all these years later, for all we know,
Huh?
Or maybe that guy grew up to be Albert Einstein. All right, Straw Dogs.
Dustin Hoffman
Good
really
one.
got at him at the end.
Yep.
I'm excited to know that Goodbye Dragon has a change in tone.
Yeah, it's not.
Does it? Yeah, it does.
It does. It's not. Rebels of the Neon God feels like a not cry for help. Maybe that's a little too much, but it's definitely a dramatic reach for something that may or may not be there by a very young man. And Stray Dogs is, I think, my take on it, my read from it was that it was a fairly depressing apocalyptic movie about something that could have been and isn't. Whether that I took it as it being a family and you seem to take it as it being the whole city or the whole country, maybe.
Yeah.
And Ryan, it seems like you thought it was the whole planet, all of nature, but whatever it is, it's pretty depressing. Goodbye Dragon is pretty light.
Okay.
I don't just based on listening to you talk about these films, Jack, I feel like Rebels of the Neon God is the cry for help, and he's making it sort of for a society, if in this political context, which I was totally ignorant about before talking about the first movie. I feel like nobody answered the cry, and Stray Dogs is the same types of people, decades later, and they haven't. No one came. They've had to.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like it's,
Wow.
and again, this is something that I feel is a strong element of Twin Peaks: The Return. Is like a hollowed out community where evil has taken over and no good has come to help.
Yeah.
To make
Wow.
it really comic booky or myth grand.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
And to hear particularly what made me think about that was the way you said he likes to study this dude's face. It's like Lynch and Kyle MacLachlan, where he's somehow watching himself age in a way.
Wow.
That is really interesting.
All right. Can't wait for the next season where we do Twin Peaks: The Return. We should do that.
I would totally fucking do that.
No, I'm not gonna talk about The Return.
We can't do Lynch.
Yeah.
The thing is to honor its online reputation, we have to do The Return, and we watch the whole thing, but we only do a single episode of 1 hour approximately on it because it is a movie. TV show.
That would be tough.
So you want to do 1 hour? Okay, talking about a 19-hour movie. Yeah.
Yeah, just treat it like it was a normal. I think the whole movie thing is a silly. I think that's a silly piece of.
Yeah, it's not
business.
a movie.
But what we have been talking about is
yeah,
Stray Dogs from 2013, which is the second part of our first pairing of his films for his 4x4. We talked about Rebels of the Neon God last week, Stray Dogs this week, and next week we start the next pairing, which is Goodbye Dragon Inn and
Days.
Days? Like
DAYS. It was his pandemic movie.
He did a pandemic movie, so it's got two characters in an apartment.
Probably. Yeah, we'll start. I guess we'll start with Goodbye Dragon Inn. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Special thanks to Annabel for joining us.
Thanks, Annabel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Inspiring as always.
I didn't know I was doing this until today, or yesterday, actually.
Well, you did great with the little time you had.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Thank
you for bringing these movies, Jack. I would have not seen them without this, and without talking about them, I would have just thought like, oh, I don't really like that guy. And that would have been the end of it. But these have been great conversations. I like him much more with the context about his life and everything that you have brought to the conversation.
Yeah, same. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I do appreciate the extra, because it made me recontextualize the movies as we were talking about them, just knowing about his history and the country's history, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Thanks to Weird II for the theme song, Ryan.
Yeah.
And thanks for Thomas for abandoning us.
Yeah. Hope that croissant was worth it, bitch.
It wasn't. You can get good croissants here.
I really want to go to France. I've never been to France. I really want to go to France. Only for a couple weeks, man. Jack. Just a couple weeks.
That's what I said.
Yeah. See you in a couple weeks, guys. 1 year later, he comes back all beaten and defeated. His teeth are all stained with tobacco. He hasn't bathed in 6 months.
Yeah, I know that.
Those last 2 points are true, pretty much.
It was quite a shock.
Did you grow your armpit hair out and read The Unbearable Lightness of Being?
I did both of those things, yes.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's end this.
Yeah, Stray Dogs. We watched it on our library app, Canopy. Where else do you think you can watch it? I would check your library streaming app if you're interested in watching it. Hoopla, Canopy.
Yeah, take over the Portland State Library if you need to, just as an stage a whole insurrection of the college campus just to take a couple DVDs.
Yeah, access to film should be a reason for protest and occupation.
I'm gonna go outside with the sign. I'm gonna be the only one there. I'm gonna be standing in the rain. It's gonna be whipping at me.
I feel like people are gonna get offended listening.
It just occurred to me that there is, and I guess can't mention the accounts on the show, but there are several like Twitter, mostly film critics. I don't know how they make money. Who love Taiwanese and Southeast Asian cinema and compile like bootleg libraries that you can download from them. One of them gave me the director's cut of Black Hat before it was issued.
Ooh,
like long before it was when it's going to come out on Blu-ray. So I guess hit up the show if you want to know some of those accounts because you're having a hard time finding these movies and you want to see them.
And we will tell you the account name so that you can avoid them because that's illegal.
Yeah, Jack
we can tell you without them getting in trouble.
Yes.
Yeah. You could ask us, and wink, wink. We won't say a word in response because it's illegal. But wink, wink. Go ahead and ask us. What's the harm? What's the worst that could happen?
We'll actually tell you. We're being facetious. Come after me, ATF. What are you gonna do? Shoot my dog? All right. Can we wrap this up?
My dog. All right. Goodbye, Dragon Inn. Next week. Bye.
Makes us flash gorgeous. I'm not talking at you. I'm talking to you. I don't want to hear about you. I want to hear from you. It's 10-4. 10-4, old buddies. Destroy. Kill all hippies.
I don't hate it. I just don't know why you strayed from the formula.
You bastards. You don't know it, Bob. I'm an artist. And I must reflect that in my rhyme.
Like my mom would vomit, if she had to watch this movie.